Okay, cool. Then let's start. Hi everybody and welcome to my session. One does not simply walk into a management position. What I learned on my journey from dev to CTO. First, what you can expect in the session. So I already had the same session in DrupalCamp Prague. In case you've been there, it will be the same one, so please don't be disappointed. I also will not talk about how I became a CTO or how you can become a CTO, and also I will not talk about technology, because I think there is not a clear definition of the CTO, because it always depends a lot on the industry you're working in. If you're working in a big company, if you're working in an agency, and even in an agency it can differ a lot if you're in a pure Drupal agency or if you have different technologies. So the role of a CTO might differ a lot. Also, I just have my perspective on this, right? So I only worked at Kokomore all my time. I'm only being CTO at Kokomore, so I can only have one view and nothing general, so I think that wouldn't be of much use. What I will talk about is my professional journey, and then I try to identify several areas that had an impact throughout my journey, and sometimes more, sometimes less, but I think they are rather generic, so I hope that each of you finds something in these areas that's also relevant for you. I'm Ela Meyer. I'm working at Kokomore AG. Kokomore is an agency for marketing, user experience, and IT with the headquarters in Frankfurt. We have offices in Sevilla, in Poland, and other German cities. We are around 150 people, and I live in Mainz, what's close to Frankfurt, together with my husband and my 2 cats. So I shortly want to show something about my career or how I stepped along. I studied media informatics, and while I was still studying, I already started to work at Kokomore as an intern. I wrote my diploma thesis there, I worked there as a student, and then in 2006 I got my first contract as a PHP developer. I worked a long time as a developer. We started at some point working with Drupal, that was Drupal 4, so also already some years ago. I was mostly focused on backend, and in this time my role and my position was rather clear. Then came a really long period where it wasn't really clear what my role was, so I had a lot of different jobs to do. I was like a Scrum master, maybe solution architect, sometimes doing the role of IT PM, but it was really hard to define an actual role name for me. Throughout this time also my responsibility grew, so I got more and more responsibility about teams, first only about some colleagues, then about the Drupal team, the full IT, and then finally in 2022 I became CTO, and that's what I still am. So in the beginning I talked about these impacting areas I haven't defined, and these are making a decision, being an introvert, a comfortable comfort zone, being a woman, and the team. And now in the following slides, I want to go and dig a bit deeper into each of these areas. I want to talk about my experiences there. I want to talk about if you are in the position that you want to level up, that you want to do a new step in your career, what you can do to get along better in these areas. And if you are on the team lead side and you have people in your team that you need to support, what you could do in order to support them. So, making a decision. So, the more you level up in your career, the more tasks and responsibilities will come to your desk and to your job. So when you're going from a dev to a lead dev, there will be things coming like you need to do time estimations, you need to write technical concepts, you might need to join some meetings with other departments. Then in the next step, if you're like a technical manager, you suddenly might have some budget responsibility. There might be more connections with other people. You will join the first client meetings. You will have team lead responsibility. You need to manage the team, hire people, things like that. And then if you're going a next step, coming to some executive level, you will also have more responsibility in the whole company, work on the company's strategy and vision, and do things like this. And the more topics are added, the harder it might be for you to make a decision, because there are many things you have to consider, and the more things are coming, the harder it will be to decide. In fact, I'm someone who's really, really hard in deciding, so I can't often even decide which Netflix movie I want to watch, and then I go to bed because I'm tired and I didn't decide on anything. and that always accompanied throughout my career. The first thing that was really big for me was the decision if I wanted to give up coding. So I guess some of you might relate if you're doing one step further and then new tasks come to your desk, and these tasks then need to be taken care about immediately, so they don't have the time to focus on coding, and you're just disrupted all the time. And at some point I was in the position that I could only code in the evening after everybody was gone and I was left alone. So at some point I needed to decide, do I want to go in the direction what I'm currently on, or do I want to step back, go in another direction so that I can really focus on coding? And it was not an easy decision. Oops, sorry, that was too fast. So what was hard for me was to decide what I wanted to do. So what is a role that would fit to me? What would be a next good step in my career? How could I put a name tag on what I want to do? And something that was also not easy, and that came especially in the later step of my career, to think about things if I can handle the responsibility and if I have everything I need for fitting in a certain position. So like, for example, when we looked for a CTO first, we had recruiting process, we looked for somebody external, we found someone that I really liked and I was happy that he was there, but still it didn't work out in the end and he left again. And then there was the decision, do we start the process again? Or will I say that I want to do it? And I was really afraid that I don't match everything, but I thought, okay, before we start all over again, maybe we find a person, maybe we are happy with the person and it's still he's or she's still leaving. So I thought, okay, I want to do it, but it was not easy to come there. So from a team member perspective, what you can do if you are in the position that you need to decide on something like, for example, on your next career step. I think the most important is that you are well informed and really know what's out there. You should get an overview about roles, and there you should really understand all aspects of a role, because often there are only things that are visible, but there's another part that you maybe can't see. It might also make sense if you look outside of your company or your agency, because maybe you don't have that many different positions. So talk with your teammates, with members from the community, find out what is their job, what they are working on, how their role is, and what's behind that, because maybe there's something that might be interesting for you. It's important that you also think about yourself, what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, but also what you're really interested in. It doesn't help if you work on some weaknesses just to improve something you really don't like. If you don't like to lead a team because you don't like to communicate with people and care about their well-being and such things, maybe don't focus on that and rather find something that goes in another direction. Be honest with yourself. So I've also seen that maybe people think the next logical step is being developer, senior developer, and then becoming some kind of manager, because that's just how the hierarchy is. Also, you don't like to deal with people, and then you should rather think about, okay, maybe that's not the right way, and maybe I should rather find another position. And also, at some later stage, especially, don't assume you need to know everything. So there will always be, especially when you're higher up in the hierarchy, there will probably always be people that know more than you in some topics. So like when I'm away from coding now, I stopped coding, I don't know, 8 years ago maybe. Of course, I don't have deep coding knowledge anymore. I mean, in fact, I have nearly none because I'm just away from that so long. But therefore, I have my Drupal team, and I have the .NET team, and I have the different people in the different teams who are the experts, so that I know these are the people I can rely on, and that can give me the feedback and can support me. Okay, that was the wrong button. You should ask for role descriptions and career paths. I think that's really important in the company, that somewhere is written down what you need to do in order to do the next step in your career, because then then people only know what they need to do to reach there, and it's not like just people get the feeling that some people get promoted because they are getting well along with their managers, others doesn't. So it's really important to have the role descriptions there. Your boss should help you to find out your interests, and also options that match your interests. As a team lead, you should define these detailed career paths. And again, I think really go into every little detail. So don't just write, you're responsible as a senior dev, you're responsible for the technical implementation, but write what's around that, so that you need to do the time estimations, that you maybe need to write the concept, that you need to present it to the client, all these things. Because I have experienced it in the past that we had discussion where somebody said, hey, this person should be promoted to senior since months because he has such a good technical knowledge. And then you said, yeah, the technical knowledge is perfect, but maybe he still needs to learn that he needs to do the estimations or that he can talk in the client meeting and things like this. So also like leading a team. Somebody thinks, yeah, leading a team is cool, but they don't know that you then also need to do interviews and you need to recruit and you maybe do some resource planning, all these things. So I think the more detailed these career paths are, the better it is. You should offer different paths and options. So it shouldn't be the only option for someone to become a manager, because if the person is not interested in dealing with people, the only option for this person would be to leave the company if you don't offer other options. So it makes really sense to check what roles are out there and in which direction people can go so that everybody has an alternative. And you should be open to adapt roles. So maybe somebody is a really good fit for something, and we had this also in the past, also in the past with one of our creative directors, that he was really good and he led his team really well, but he was not so good in organizing. So at some point you find out that it might make sense to, I will tell you later, Joao, that it might make sense to add somebody at his side who supports him with this organizational task, because otherwise this person would have left, everybody would have been unhappy, and so this was a good solution. And together with a team member, you should help them to find their role, you should help them to get a realistic perception of the role, and you should be honest. So you shouldn't just promote somebody because this person is with you for X years, or you get along well with this person or whatever, but it should be really based on a solid decision. Getting out of your comfort zone. And this is the perfect topic, because standing here for me definitely is not my comfort zone, and it really took quite some effort to get out of this. So the comfort zone is described as something where you do your work and you know what you're actually doing, because it's your regular work. So you have done the task several times. You might still be stressed because it's a lot of work, but it's nothing that really challenges you because it's something you are really comfortable with. But in order to improve and to get better, you need to get out of this comfort zone, and you need to have some level of stress and anxiety, because only then you are challenged and then you can improve. But you need to be careful, because there's only a small path and then you get into the danger zone, because then the level of anxiety and stress is so high that you've probably fully blocked and you cannot be performant at all. So I had several situations where I stepped out of my comfort zone, like mentioning before. It was like doing the decision if I wanted to stop coding. When I was in the beginning of my development, I really hated to do time estimations. I didn't like to join client meetings. All these things stressed me a lot, but still I had to do that at some point. As I mentioned before, I don't like coding presentations yet. Still, I think it might be useful to do it. So here I am. Sometimes I find it still hard to give direct feedback, especially with people I really like and like working with. Giving uncomfortable feedback is still something that's not easy for me sometimes. Also joining events. Like one of my first bosses really needed to push me a bit to join the first Drupal event, because I really didn't like to go there. I was so afraid of so many people I didn't know. I didn't really know what I should do there. So he didn't force me, but he pushed me constantly that until I think it was DrupalCon London, I don't know the year, but yeah, some time ago. And then I was really happy when I was there, when I found out how welcoming the community is. But yeah, that was also something that was not that easy. From a team member perspective, if you have decided that you want to do something new, that you want to do a new step in your career, or you learn something new, you should really define what you need in order to get there, and you should try to plan it in small steps. Like don't maybe set yourself, you can set yourself the goal that you want to have a presentation at the DrupalCon, but maybe don't start with this. Rather try to have first some internal knowledge sharing sessions in your company, then maybe try to speak at a local community meeting, things like this, to get there step by step, to avoid to get into this panic mode. And if you still get there, then talk with your boss. It doesn't help that you're fully blocked and you can't move anymore, but rather try to talk about it, that you're afraid, and ask for help. Also important, don't lose your goals out of sight during daily business. I think if you need to do something that's somehow uncomfortable, it's easy to just do your daily work because you know how to do it and just stick to this, and push the other things aside because they are a bit uncomfortable. And you shouldn't do this because you want to exceed. So try to plan this somehow in your calendar, set some, I don't know, reminders, some milestones so that you can work towards it. You should ideally set these goals together with your boss, so because he or she can help you to keep track of these things. You should ask for feedback from your boss, but also from your colleagues. You should also ask for some training budget if you think you need some more help, and also ask for a fallback option. So it shouldn't be that if you decide to do a step, that's the final decision. If you find out that it doesn't work, it should always be an option for you to go one step back. And we had this case lately that one of our colleagues from the front-end team decided that he would rather like to go into the direction of solution architecture because he really liked to talk with client, he liked to do concepts. So we said, okay, we will try this out. And we had a long transition period, but we also said it's totally clear if either this person is not happy or if his new boss is not happy with this, there's of course the option to go back and just follow the other path then and find another option. But so far it's working really well, so we're all happy about this decision. As a team lead, provide trainings. Don't forget the soft skills. This is something that we are not that good at, so I think we put some effort, or we try to train people from a technical perspective, for example, but we often assume that somebody as a team lead is just well as a team lead and he will be able to handle people. And I think these soft skills are something that should be trained more often and more regularly, because some people really could have some support with this. Have an open failure culture so that people shouldn't have to worry if they fail. And also don't hide your own failures as a manager. So it's much easier if people in your team know that you're also doing things wrong and you're talking about it and it's not a problem, then it's much easier for them to open up as well. Together with your team leads, you should have, with a team member, you should have an eye for the people's weak spots and try to get them out of the comfort zone. Don't try to push them too hard. Try to find the right balance so that they can handle it and that they are not overwhelmed. Ensure also that team members understand your reasoning behind it. So if you just have sent me to a Drupal event without explaining, I just thought, yeah, I'm there, I have some sessions, I can see them online, so why should I go there? So try to explain that it's good to meet the people, that you get the spirit, things like this, so that people always understand why they should do something. And again, provide feedback so that people know how they are doing. Don't let being an introvert standing in your way. So one of the biggest barriers to step up the career is being introvert, lacking self-confidence, or imposter syndrome. And there's a study that shows that 50% of the people are rather introvert, the other 50 are rather extrovert. And even in the first level, like when you have taking one level up in the career as a supervisor, you only have 12% of introverts, and the rest are extroverts. And this just goes like this. So at the top career level, you only have 2% introverts, and the rest are extroverts. So it's really, it's not that easy to get along in this world as an extrovert or a rather quiet person. I would myself consider also as an extrovert, not an extrovert, the opposite, an introvert. So I was always rather quiet and rather shy. I had the feeling often during work that everybody is somehow louder, more aggressive, and that it was not easy for me to be not overlooked. Luckily, there were still some people who saw some potential in me, and that was also like one of my first IT bosses I had, that even though I was definitely the quietest one in the development team, he saw that I was good in making the connections, maybe connecting project managers, developers, marketing people, and he tried to push me in this right direction. But I really don't know what would have happened if he hadn't seen this, because it's really easy that you stay at the lower level if you don't have somebody who's supporting you. From the team member perspective. And I know that it's all really easily said, that you should believe in yourself, you should trust in yourself, you should always be open if you have doubts or worries, and you should voice your ideas and your expectations. But sometimes it's not this easy, because it is not always something that can come from within you. So you should try to either learn about the topic by reading books, listening to podcasts, things like this, to learn more and find a way to overcome it. Also, if you're really so blocked that you cannot talk to people or you cannot talk at all, I think it's also totally fine to look for professional help, because there are trainers, coaches, a lot of people and resources that can try to help you to overcome the situation. You should always ask for what you want and don't expect that people will realize it by themselves. So I had this also, that when it was a promotion, I thought, okay, it's somehow logical that I should be promoted, but I wasn't. And I also found out that it was somehow part of the position, that my bosses expected if I really want this, I need to ask for it, because it's at such a senior level where you should be able to talk about what you want and what you don't want. So you cannot always expect that things are coming to you by your own. Sometimes it's also that your boss maybe just doesn't realize it, because they are so busy and they don't see that things are not going wrong or should be different. So try to talk about what's important for you. Ask for support if you are not able to do this on your own, and if you think you need somebody. Ask also for the space and the setting. This is not so relevant maybe anymore, but especially when people are in the office, it could also be that you feel not well if you're in such a big office with 1,000 people running around, that you would rather have a separate space. So these are all things that could make your life easier, and you should ask for it. But in my opinion, the goal is not to make an extrovert out of you. So I think we introverts are fine as we are, as long as we manage to get along. So it's not needed that you become the next king or queen of small talk, but just try to get along in a way. As a team lead, it's important to provide a psychological safe space. So people should always be comfortable to speak up in your team when you're around. They should know that nobody laughs at them, that you give them the time if they speak, and if they explain something, that you don't push them. So that's super important. You should listen to the quiet ones and try to not overlook them. You should also don't let yourself be blinded by other people. I mean, there are some people who can sell themselves really, really well, and you have the impression that they are doing the best job in the world. But in fact, the outcome is maybe just so-so, but they are just good in selling. So really try to have a look at the outcome to see if the outcome is really worth what they are talking about, or maybe they are just good sellers. And again, I think it's important to talk openly about your self-doubts and worries, because when people, I mean, of course, only when it affects you, but if people have the feeling that you understand them, it will make things easier for them. Together with a team member, I think you should ensure that also quiet people have the chance to be seen and to talk. You should also push them a bit. So if you have a team meeting, maybe every month somebody else can present something. If you have retrospectives, ensure that everybody has a word, so that there are not people who can hide away completely, because they need to get used to talking step by step. Sorry. You should also recognize people's accomplishments and make successes visible, because they are often extroverts, or some of them are really good in tooting their own horn, and they are running around the company and telling everybody what they did really great, and then in the perception of everybody, this person is really cool because they achieved so much. But there might be other people that achieved the same thing, they are just really bad in talking about it. So if you have somebody like this in your team, you should be the one who talks about it in front of others, so that these successes are also visible. You should establish some feedback processes. What we are doing is like having 360 degrees reviews at the end of the year, where always people evaluate themselves and they get the evaluation from people they work with. And I think that's really well. For one thing, I think sorry. So you can see pretty well that really often, like I would say in 95% of the cases, the people see themselves worse than the colleagues see them. So you can always see that self-esteem is often a bit lower, and I guess it helps the people a lot to see that in fact others see them better than they themselves are seeing them. So I think it's a good idea to really provide feedback of this kind so that people see how they are perceived from others. Also, they can see on what to work. And I think that that's really helpful. And adapt your behavior. So if you have a person, you know that the person feels really stressed if you just call them or run to their desk or something like this, then better write them an email, say, okay, I need feedback, give it to me tomorrow, I will call you in 2 hours, so that people can be prepared and that they don't feel overly stressed. Next topic is being a woman, being part of a minority. So I can only focus on being a woman because I'm not part of another minority, but I guess some of these points might be applicable there as well. And there's again some statistics that's saying that from 52 men starting or entering a job and 48 women, even in the first promotion level, it's already 59 men and only 40 women. And then at the end, at the top level, you only have 24 women left, and the rest is men. And as this is broken already at such an early state, of course, it can only get worse, because if in the first step there are already less women than men, that will just transfer, and so women lose ground at every step. I wish it would always be like this. Unfortunately, it isn't. But luckily, I must say that I didn't have too many struggles. So most of the time, at least, especially the people on my team and also my company were really supportive. Still, I feel more pressure because I fear that people might not take me serious, and I don't know if this is just my impression or if this is real, but at least that's how I feel. I have the feeling that I'm challenged more often. So I had more than one client meeting or meeting with another agency where I was saying, coming as a director IT, CTO, and had other developers sitting around, and I was saying, okay, look, I'm not that deep into the technical topic. If we need something, we need to add a developer, and still the guys sitting around shot one question after the other about technical details. That might be because these guys were just really unnice people, but I had the feeling that that was happening because I was a woman, and they had the feeling that they cannot just keep it like that. I have the feeling that I'm interrupted more often and that I have more often to say that I please want to finish my sentences. Especially in the beginning of my career, I often had to do things that are not directly related to my job. So I had to take the notes, I had to book table for dinner, I had to get birthday presents. Even if there were conflicts in some team that were not really my team, I had to talk with the people because I can talk so well with people, right? So all these things that were, I think, happening to me because I was a woman. I am a woman. And my favorite example is that on the first Drupal event I joined in DrupalCamp London, that the first person that I met outside from our company was directly asking me, you are the girlfriend of one of the developers, or are you a designer? And I was so, okay, I want to go out again. But luckily, I mean, I guess most of you, all of you hopefully know that it's not the rule here, and it was luckily only an exception. Still, it felt really shitty, to be honest. So, if you're a team member and you are part of a minority, recognize bias and talk about it and point out discriminating behavior. So you shouldn't just swallow it. When you have the feeling you're discriminated against or people are saying things that are somehow discriminating, don't just be silent, but talk about it, point it out, and if you don't dare to do it on your own, find an ally, find people who are like you, find people that you know understand you, so that you have somebody who supports you in this. Also, something that might be happening that you overlooked, similar like the introverts, so try to talk about your successes so that you get some visibility, and also talk about your feelings. when you're not comfortable because you're the only one of some kind. So I also had meetings when I was sitting there with 10 men, and for me this wasn't comfortable because I had the feeling that I somehow sticked out just because I was the woman. So for the next call I tried to get another woman on the call, being it then also project manager, designer, just to not be there all alone and not feeling that awkward again. And I think that's totally legit. You should ask from others that you can define metrics to measure progress. So if you have the feeling that your work is not recognized, that you are always discriminated against just because you're a woman, then you should insist on some metrics to compare the progresses. You should ask for action and consequences, so it shouldn't be that you complain about something or somebody and then your boss says, yeah, ha ha ha, this person is always like that, so funny. That's not like this, right? You really should insist that something is happening, and if not, get support. So if your boss is maybe part of the problem, level up a step, talk to HR, talk to other senior colleagues, and if you have the feeling that nobody's helping you, then you should maybe try to find another company, because that sounds like a structural problem and that probably is not the best place to work. As a team lead, you should try to build a diverse team and therefore add different perspectives to the hiring process. So what we are also doing, if we are hiring on a higher level, and unfortunately most people are male there, then I'm also joining the process of hiring, even if it's not somebody in my team, but also to get another perspective so that I can add on this. And it's really often that we see that I bring some other perspective inside this, and it's good if you have as many different perspectives as possible. You should recognize bias and avoid it. You should ensure, of course, that all people are treated equally. Find a way to support I'm sorry, I'm too fast. So you should try to find a way to support minorities. So offer some coaching, mentors, maybe there are supporting networks. Something that also can help is offering flexible working environments. So at least in Germany, it's really a problem that we still don't have enough childcare possibilities. So often when women get mother afterwards, it's really hard for them to get back into the job. So maybe it's also an option that you say I have one open position, but instead of just putting one man there, we just put 2 women half-time. If they both want to work half-time because the other time they need to work no, they don't need to work with their kids. They need to take care about their kids. Then the other half of the day they can be in the office, and to go together they can fill this one position. And we also did this in the past with 2 female colleagues, and it works out pretty well. So I think it's definitely worth to try to be flexible. And avoid the typical pitfalls like giving women the office housework, just what I said before, taking notes, booking tables, things like this. It shouldn't be always the woman that's doing this. Together with a team member, gives her support, don't play complaints down. And yeah, I think I've mentioned these things before. The people around me, another statistics. There it says that the main driver of job satisfaction are the interpersonal relationships. So these are 39%, and that the job is interesting, it's only 35%. So the most important part at work are the people around you. And there, the relationship between management and the people is 86% as driver for job satisfaction. So if you're a manager, something you should really take care about is how you can make the people in your team happy and how you can make their life easier. I think that's really super clear. So for me, the biggest driver definitely is the team and my team, and I'm really happy with the people in my team, because I think without them I wouldn't get there where I am, especially also in the later steps. If I wouldn't have known that they support me, I probably would never have dared to do something. So I knew that they would have my back and that they would not complain and think, oh, why is she doing this now? But this was really super important for me. But of course also my bosses played a big role in my development, and as I've said before, I had some that were really important. They recognized somehow my talents and what I was good in and tried to push me into this direction. I also had others with whom it didn't work that well, but I think even this helps you in the end, because you find out what you could maybe do different and in another way because you didn't like these things. And these things are now basically a summary of the things before. So as a team member, you should always give feedback. You should also give feedback to your boss and tell him or her what you're happy with, what you're unhappy with. Direct communication is super important with your boss, but also with the people in your team. Try to not talk about each other, but rather try to talk with the people directly and solve conflicts one-to-one without going up hierarchies or so, because you think it's easier. And your boss should just support you with everything. He should or she should give you guidance and support. There should be regular check-ins and regular feedbacks. And as a team lead, more or less also what I mentioned before, you should have an open communication, communicate on eye level, be empathetic, provide a safe space, and always empower your team. But also with your team members, ask them for help if they can support, because usually if you have a good relation with your team, people are also happy to help you and support you. Some tools you can use for doing some of these things is like having regular one-to-one meetings where you can talk about the smaller goals, about the bigger goals, have these 360 degrees reviews I mentioned in the beginning, so that people can get feedback from other colleagues, also from outside their own department. What we started doing lately was having stay interviews. So usually we are having exit interviews. When somebody is leaving, we want to find out why the person is leaving, what were the reasonings behind that. And we found out that it maybe also makes sense to have these kind of interviews regularly with people who are staying, to talk with them about, okay, if you could imagine that you would leave in 2 years or next year, what would be the most probable reason why would you be leaving? What's the reason that keeps you currently here? All these things to find out a bit more about the mood in the team, about the motivation of the people, if they are happy or not. I mentioned already the job profiles and career paths that should be rather detailed, and regular trainings. And in fact, that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Was it this one? Danke.
Well, first of all, Ella, thank you so much for the really wonderful session. It was great to hear you sharing your experience, your thoughts. So thank you for that. And you touched on one of the very relevant topics, I would say, mental health, like anxiety, the imposter syndrome, etc. And I believe that each of us, to some extent, experiences that at some point in their career. And especially it became like really relevant after COVID, as we all know. So some companies, for instance, they are starting to provide for their staff, for their employees, like the mental support, etc. So what's your take, like what's your feeling on that first? And if you have any useful tips how to stay sane, please do share.
I think it's definitely a good idea to help your team and support your team with this. And if you get help from outside, I could also imagine that it totally makes sense. For me, what also really worked well, I had a coaching starting beginning of this year, because in fact last year I really felt kind of burned out and everything was really a lot and stressful. And then I also talked with my boss and said, look, it doesn't go cannot continue like this. And most of the things were rather inside of me. It was really a lot of mental stress. It was not like that there was too much work. And then he also said, yeah, well, let's try to find a coach. I mean, they had some person they were working with, and they had now regular coaching sessions with her. And in fact, since then, it really feels much, much better. So I'm still stressed because the workload might be high, but I'm not stressed that much that after every second email I want to go out and explode because everything is so annoying or whatever. So I'm totally for finding support in this. And of course, as I mentioned before, having the open communication. So I think one of the reasons also to get this help, I needed to talk with my boss. And it wasn't really the pleasant, it was not a bad conversation, but I it was a step for me to go and get there and say, look, I can't do this at the moment anymore because it's so much. So you need to overcome yourself. And for me, it's not easy. I could imagine for others as well. So I think it's really important that you have a trustful relationship with your boss and then talk with this person.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thanks.
So behind every leader, there's someone who has seen the qualities of the potential. But you mentioned your boss. He saw this in you and he was pushing you, or she was pushing you. Now, how much is too much? Right? Because that meme of, Sam and Frodo crossing over this boundary, you say, he's like, come on, we're going to leave coding behind. They encouraged, but there are lines, right, that you can't cross as well. You have to try to see. So could you speak a little bit about that? When you're seeing qualities in someone and you're looking to empower them, how did they do this for you, and what's some advice in terms of how to know how much is too much, if that question makes sense?
The questions make total sense. I'm not sure if there's a clear answer for that. So I would say that's definitely something individual. So what might be totally fine for one person is probably already too much for the other person. So I think what's important that you really know the people and understand them, and you know and understand their fears. And yeah, but I don't know. So I would have been really annoyed if my former boss would just have signed me up for DrupalCon and would say, yeah, go there, right? I'm the boss, I tell you to go there, it's my decision, and it would be his right in the end because, yeah, it's a conference, it's about my job, so I have to join. That, I guess, wouldn't have helped me because I would rather be really reluctant to go there. I probably wouldn't have been open to interact with people. So rather trying over, and it took some events. So there were like one DrupalCon before, one DrupalCamp before in Germany where he tried to say, hey, like, come, it's fun. And I just didn't want, so it took a while. And yeah, but I think there's no recipe for that. So it's just try to find the balance. And therefore, I guess you need to talk a lot with people. Cool. Then I forgot, sorry, to show the sliders. Thank you for our sponsors. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming.